Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're joined by special guest Dustin Ray. Full disclaimer and transparency, Isaac and Dustin may be doing some work together in the future. So we want to put that out there right at the beginning for full transparency. Dustin is the CEO of Red Hook Agency. Dustin, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So I'm Dustin Ray. I'm the CEO of Red Hook Agency. I'm also the principal engineer of React at Laurel AI and the author of D-Ray's newsletter. And today we're here to talk about one of my clients that has a CRM, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah. So I asked Dustin on because he has a client that is doing what sounds like an almost full rewrite, he has a client. They are a CRM of some kind, and we're going to refer to them as white label CRM to protect the people who want to be good but are not in a good spot now. And it sounds like they have a mess, and I just want to talk to him about it and see, how we could help Dustin help them shape the project so that they don't end up doing a rewrite. So Dustin, tell us a little bit about white label CRM and the disaster that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. So the white label CRM is an acquired product from another CRM software. So they kind of acquired this legacy code base in the state that it's in. It is a PHP backend and no framework, some Symfony components, but really just kind of open-ended and bespoke. And the front end is the same. So it's just JavaScript and jQuery. And then there's some PHP and JavaScript front end kind of embedded into the PHP files. So kind of the old style of everything all in one PHP file. The team has been working on it for, I'd say about a year and a half. They have made significant progress in adding, they reskinned the entire UI, obviously, added some new features, added some new dashboards, some kind of aggregate data, built some features on top of the existing code base. But they didn't really go back in and fix any of the underlying issues that the team had prior to starting that work. So things like unit tests, type safety, documentation, system design, none of those things were really available to the team. So this just kind of spiraled out of control to the point of where they're kind of in a bug treadmill, so to say, like the typical whack-a-mole problem that you've seen when you start to do a quality initiative. So I would say that's kind of the current situation that they're in.
So that's super interesting. So is it correct that because this was an acquired product, it's being used by, it has customers, and it does its thing somewhat well? Did any of the original developers come along with the acquisition? Or are they still there?
Yeah, great question. So at first, the team was a little split between working on the old product and the new, and then eventually we needed to bring in some of the old developers to be full-time on the new iteration of the product. So I think we have two of the members from that original team now working on this new iteration. And they do have actual customers. So this is in use, and it's a home service-based CRM. So these are people with usually, small to medium-sized businesses. And it's their livelihood. So if the software is not working to send out things like invoices, estimates, or to collect payments, these people can't make payroll, right? So it's kind of a dependent system for their business. It's really core to the business. So when we have things like incidents or certain features aren't working, especially emails, right? If we can't send out invoices and SMSs, we really have an issue collecting money for end users.
Yes, and we are highly aware of that. Isaac works in payments, and I work in emails quite a bit. So yeah, the impact of not being able to send out bills and collect payments is huge.
Yeah.
So this is great. So it's a product. It has users. They've been adding features, and now they're stuck in, two steps forward, one step back with their bugs.
Exactly.
And what is it they're hoping? They've hired you to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Is it to do React, or is it to rebuild the backend? What is it they're hoping that you are going to provide?
Great question. Yeah, great question. So when we first I'll kind of add some more context here into kind of how we've gotten here. So we actually engaged quite a while ago, and we started out by moving them from their old hosting provider to their new one. So when the client came to me, he was kind of like, we're having these scaling issues. We're kind of, everything's on one server. The client wasn't really aware of why that was an issue. But they were essentially growing too large for the single server. You have your dev, staging, prod, the database, the server, everything all on one box.
Wow.
So it was just having a lot of issues, even user files. So think like things that people were uploading, images, the storage just kept growing and growing on the actual box, which is also really a security issue as well. So when we kind of got into that, like one of the first things we recommended was moving towards more of a cloud native approach. We could kind of just lift and shift the server essentially onto an EC2, pull out the database into its own. It was a MySQL database, so we pulled that out, put that into an RDS as a stopgap. And then we were able to kind of scale that instance up and up as the traffic grew over the next, 3 to 6 months after that kind of AWS migration. And that really saved us on the infrastructure side. So then we split out all of those different services, and that kind of helped get some initial breathing room to just get back to dealing with the application layer. So that was the first thing that we did. Then once we had that resolved, the kind of spotlight shifted to the quality of the product. Because once the incidents weren't happening and people were actually able to log in and use the software, then they were running into workflow roadblocks. So then we were kind of brought in to say, okay, let's look at the bugs, the process, and the team and figure out what can we do to kind of get through to the customers or kind of deliver to the customers a much better experience going forward where they can really depend on the software to run their business day to day. So that's what we're currently trying to get to. And I would say we want to make a large impact in, say, 30 to 60 days to where we can rebuild customer trust. And the reason that's so important is just obviously when you get into quality issues, churn has gotten really high, and it's gotten high due to lack of user trust. So we want to rebuild user trust by showing, hey, we've kind of taken ownership of these issues. We've stopped feature development in order to address the quality issues. And we want to win your trust back and win your business back. I would say the one saving grace of the customer base is it's very community focused. A lot of them are really in it for the long-term mission of the product, and they kind of understand why that product exists. So they're kind of willing to be patient, but at the same time, they have businesses to run, they have families to support, and they have to be able to use the software in a way that helps them do that.
When you say you're repairing some of the user trust there, earlier you mentioned emails and SMSs might not get sent out, so they might miss payroll. And then if someone's opening up an email that's hitting the database directly to make it to write the fact that it was read, like the email was opened. Yeah. Are those the primary issues? Or are there what are some other issues that they're running into that's making them a little more soured on the CRM?
Yeah, I would say there's what I call a few problem areas. And I think a lot of these relate to the majority of CRM systems. So it's in the emails and the SMSs being either unreliable or the tracking related to them being unreliable. So for example, we may actually send out all of the emails that the customer was expecting, but if the tracking doesn't work or the load hits the DB in a certain way and we don't get all of those records updated, it may look like we didn't even send the emails out at all. Or it may look like no one opened them or they got no clicks. So they're actually thinking they're underperforming because they're not getting the full data. And there's nothing really in the system to notify them of that unless we put a notice in there saying, hey, there was an incident, from this time period to this time period, your data may be, slightly off for these reasons. So I think that's kind of one piece of it. The problem areas I would say is in, emails, SMS, not always payments, but in how the Stripe integration is set up, not when you're subscribing to be using the software, but if the users want to use a Stripe Connect type of system to be able to send out invoices and collect on their behalf, that they'll get paid out on that. There's some issues in that system from time to time, which really hurts user trust, obviously. And then the other thing is really the automations is one of the big ones. And I think they're on either their second or third iteration of that automation system to try to improve the quality there. And then the other one is something that's I think is pretty interesting. It's called the dispatch board. What the dispatch board is so if you're say a lawn care company, you may want to hit a certain route to be the most optimized for the day, and you want to the manager wants to pre-plan that route for the crew, and they may have multiple crews, and then they may have maybe this job needs 2 crews, so they need to kind of figure out how all of that's going to be handled. And then things change, right? Like, as you guys know, both in software and in landscaping, roofing, it doesn't matter. Like, sometimes things go sideways in the project. So that may mess up the schedule that the manager had planned. So they need to be able to, in real time, track where the vehicles and the crews are, understand the issues and like the timing and the estimates to those routes to be able to understand like what is the likelihood of finishing that job on time. So that's kind of, I would say those are the main problem areas that I hear the most about. Like, it's this bug or this bug in these areas.
Gotcha.
Those are some great features, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, this sounds
Yeah,
like a
it's
really
really
useful
cool.
CRM, actually.
I'm like, yeah, you're describing. I'm like, man, that sounds like a pretty tight CRM. Nice job, white label. Like, I could see why customers would use it and would enjoy it. And I think there was one thing you said that I wanted to call up because I think it's important. A lot of the customers are rooting for the CRM, and
Yeah.
I think that's an underappreciated thing. Most of the time, customers are not super mercenary and transactional. They do want you to succeed, and they will have a little patience, and they will often feel bad about abandoning you as you flounder.
Right.
Because at the same time, it is their business and they have to succeed too. So.
Yeah, I want to add something on that I think is important for this particular project and client. I think the reason that they're getting that kind of support is it's really a mission-driven company, which we've seen some kind of trend and buzzword towards like mission brands and mission-driven type of companies in recent years. But I would say it's actually true for this project and client. And the reason that is even the way the CRM is built. One of the kind of aggregate dashboards is actually built in a way that it's not just aggregating data and just summing it up and showing it to you. It's actually taking the data, summing it up and showing it to you, and then saying, based on these numbers and our benchmarks, what should you be changing or thinking about or training on in order to fix this number to match how the rest of your numbers are looking in order to hit the next level of growth in your business. And so for someone that is, in a home service-based business, this is likely not somebody that has like a business degree or went to business school or, has a lot of experience in like building and scaling companies. So to have a software that can help you make those decisions and give you the data to do it and then show you the whys and the hows is really powerful for these companies, right? It can really help them get to the next stage of their growth. Because sometimes, as I'm sure most software companies and entrepreneurs have seen, there's, you may have a certain level of success doing something one way, and then you hit a plateau and you need to figure out why is the market responding in that way, or what am I doing wrong? Is it an operational issue? Whatever it is. So being able to identify those and have a path to solve them, I think is one of the reasons that company is rooting for this product so much. It could have such a large impact for them.
That's
A
awesome.
little bit of an educational component built in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I've seen that at a previous company as well. And the community was so positive on the CRM that they would hold like little town hall kind of things where people would show up and you get like training on it. But whenever we released new features, everyone would be like cheering, like, yes, we can't wait for that particular product, because you had so much love for the product. And then constructive criticism, which it sounds like is also very healthy and honest here too. So I agree with Jeffrey in that's actually kind of a really winning component here. You've got people willing to be patient while you struggle through the growing pains.
Yeah. So I've been taking notes, and but should we concentrate on the email SMS part? Because that seems like something.
We could start there. It's pretty recent.
So it sounds like you've got sort of the double-edged sword of you're not sure that you sent the emails. You think you have, but you aren't sure. And also you aren't sure about the response. And you mentioned that you're using third-party providers. You said Mailgun and somebody else, I forget. SendGrid. And so the problem is not Mailgun or SendGrid, it's the integration, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about that too. I think it'll be interesting to hear about kind of the world of problems that are surrounding it. Because as you know, email is a very complex topic when you get into the nitty-gritty, especially when what I'm mostly talking about is deliverability, right? So deliverability, very tough to get right, is in my opinion. I mean, especially when you're first starting out with a new domain, new software, like those are things that are really hard to get right. What we saw in the beginning was there were no constraints to what users could send out. So for example, they may send out, very spammy sounding emails, $20 off this, discount this, and they had no concept of like blocking people that were reporting as spam or bounced emails, or anything like that. So there's essentially no enforcement of best practices, whatsoever within the system when we first started. So what that led to as the company started to scale, they were using a different provider. I think at first, I can't remember who it was, but they were essentially putting a limit on the amount of emails that we could send out because we had too many reports of either bounces or spam reports or blocks or whatever. So when you get those at the Gmail and different email provider levels, the service we were using was lowering our reputation, which would limit the output. And it was just, we couldn't keep up. I mean, at one point, I think we could send out like 100 emails an hour or something, and we need to send out like hundreds of thousands. And it's like, this is not going to work. So what we ended up doing to kind of combat that is we wanted to split the emails that were coming from the end users and system emails. So transactional emails. So we wanted the white label CRM to be able to send out those emails from the system and not get blocked, right? Because we need to be able to communicate with both customers and then their end users about things that are happening within the system. So that was one thing. The other thing that was happening is the sales team had their emails going to spam due to using just the main domain for all the way through to end users. So there was domain reputation issues with like the main company's domain because that was the only domain being used. So that was where they were. So what we ended up doing was, like I said, splitting those into two services so that we could get both kind of scale. And then we had different domains within those accounts too. So we could kind of juggle reputation as we were building up domains. And the idea there was if one got hammered, you could kind of decommission that one almost like Kubernetes pods and, use a different email that had already been ramped up, and kind of build through this build phase of getting out, both reputation and the throughput that we needed, for our end users.
That is cool. Email and deliverability is one of those domains that I love hearing about it because I have no idea, but it's so complicated and such a hostile environment that it's like it's such an interesting game theory kind of place.
Yeah. So I'd say that's where we're at now. And the current, I think, scale issue, we kind of have a couple different issues. So we have kind of an observability issue within the system that is deciding which email provider to use, as well as what we wanted to implement is like a global block list of sorts. So if you report us as spam, you bounce 3 times, something like this, these different rules, put all these rule sets together. If you fall into like one of our bad actors, we kind of, put you in a quarantine. So you won't receive any emails from any customer of the platform going forward. And that was the idea to really boost reputation is if we remove all of those bounces and bad emails, the first time it happens, we won't get repeat offenders of people just reporting the same company for just blasting them with marketing emails over and over again. And then the tracking. So being able to track all of those clicks is the kind of DB scale issue that goes along that. So that's probably the whole picture of the problem domain.
That's interesting. I'm surprised. Look, I would have just assumed that Mailgun and SendGrid would have required there be an unsubscribe link, and then at the very least at their level, they would have respected it.
Yeah, they do have the unsubscribe link, and they do have like some reporting, which we've found it seems to be relatively accurate. Like we've been really leveraging that. But it's really about our system not even sending to those people again, because people don't always hit the unsubscribe button. They may just hit like report as spam or block, right? And then that if they keep doing that, it's like repeat offenses. And we were seeing some of that where people were just doing those kinds of actions. So removing them from the send theoretically should help the reputation.
Makes sense.
Right. And so then are you still in a situation where I assume you've got the white label is a multi-tenant CRM and you've got just a single database instance in production. So you're writing
Correct.
all of your email transactions to the same place that you're writing all the day-to-day data. Like, so, the dispatch board and the emails are all going to the same place.
Yeah, and it's all in one database right now.
Okay, yeah, that's that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Jeffrey has worked with this intimately in the last few years.
yeah. So, well, yeah, I've dealt with this this problem because imagine it's also going to be bursty, right? So you send in an email campaign,
Yep. And
you're going
write
to have this
heavy.
burst
Yeah.
of thing, and then it's going to be super write heavy, and it's going to block everybody
Yep.
else.
Yep.
The it sounded like since you said EC2, I'm guessing you're on AWS,
Yeah.
and
Right.
sort of the very simple thing to do right off the bat, instead of doing straight through processing where you get a request, you write it to the database, you get the next request, decouple it. So have the request come to a server, or you can even use Lambdas if you want to be fancy, and have that write to SQS, the Amazon's native distributed queue. Well, it's not distributed. Amazon's native queue, right? Just have it write straight to a queue, and then you can have a different process reading from the queue and writing to the database in batches or in what have you. So that would be one, more efficient, and two, you can keep the pressure fairly constant.
Yep.
And Amazon will let you have, like by default, it's something like 5 billion messages on a queue. So you can back up for hours and hours on there if your writers fall behind, and that's fine. I think that'll relieve a lot of your pressure. And then almost immediately, or at the same, I guess, don't just use SQS, have it actually write to SNS and then set up two SQSs, where one of them just write it to a log file, like literally write the data to S3 so that you have a written log that you can go back and review after there's incidents. Just so you've got a dump. And then you actually have what you actually wrote to the database in a timely manner. SNS is kind of the pub sub, so it basically lets you have as many readers as you want for no additional work.
So would you have multiple readers reading off of the queue and then writing to the DB? Or how would you control that flow? Like, how would you control that piece of it? Is it just through limiting how many go through the queue at a time?
It would depend on traffic. I guess my first pass, since it's a multi-tenant system, which to the less technical readers, that implies you've got one database, right? You have one production database and all the customer data is in there. So it's okay that all of the events are coming to the thing. I would have the reader suck down some large number, like 200 or 300 messages at a time, transform that into a single bulk write, and do a bulk insert into the table. So instead of your current model where you're writing, 300 responses come in, and you're going to write 300 events to the database, you're going to have things queue up, and you're then going to write it in chunks of 300. So even though writing is going to be a lot less, and then when that falls behind, and it depends. I don't know how fast that's going to be, technologies and whatnot. Then you could have more readers. SQS is good. The client will give you a default. So it's like, I want 100 messages or every 10 seconds. And so it'll go until, whatever, you get your number of messages or the timeout happens, and then it'll go. So if those loops are too big, you can just set up a second one, which will also wait. And so they'll just be, blocked, waiting to get a set number of messages. And so then you can just scale it horizontally.
Yeah, that makes sense. At what point would you, I guess in your mind, do those need to be in a purpose-driven DB? Like, would you make a write optimized database for those records and then store it that way? Or would that be not worth the effort, in your opinion?
I would. It depends on the complicated, I don't know the data model at all or how hard it would be for the relationalness of it. But ideally, you don't. Well, just
there's a running joke. There's a running joke in the team that it's the least relational database ever written. So they've essentially written it without foreign keys, it's basically a NoSQL database in SQL. And I think there, even the indexing wasn't, we didn't really have indexes on a lot of this stuff until recently. So
It's always a good day when you find that you're missing an index and you put it in, and then all of a sudden everything goes boom. You're like, whoa.
yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of that. It's like finding those. Yeah.
Yeah, ideally, I wouldn't write log data to the same data store that I'm having your just regular system data because, like, when it gets busy or when something happens, it'll crush you, and it'll give the
and you'll be missing those logs too.
Yeah, but if that's where the data is today, then I wouldn't address that first off. So if you imagine if you've got now that the incoming events are going to SNS and you're writing it to log, just a literal log, and then you're also writing to the database, you're now in a good position where when you have time, like when that becomes the burning thing, you can literally just set in AWS, hey, create another SQS. Cool. Now I've got the data forked again, and I'm going to write it to a different data store, and I can bring that up over time.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So by writing to a different data store, you're suggesting that essentially you shouldn't really be writing the same database anyway. You should just move it to a separate area, and all the reads are reading from your main database. You're writing to like all the email opens you write to a separate database. Then if they are relational, you can try to join them to that separate database. That way you're not tanking your primary database.
Right, especially because this is customers are using it to run their business. So you don't want to run the risk that, hey, somebody's trying to route their crews somewhere and they can't because some other customer just sent out an email blast to 1,000 or 10,000 people. Yeah. And so now they've lost control of their crew. Like they can't see what's next on the schedule, or they're waiting 10, 15 seconds for that page to load. Like that's just
it makes
a bad
sense to hammer a separate database with writes. Yeah. If possible. Yeah.
Well, and to kind of go ahead.
Oh no, keep going. I was going
to say the current, just to give you a little bit of the current architecture that we have in the DB, we have a primary DB that is both the writer and like the majority of the reads, and then we have another read only where we've started putting things that don't need like guaranteed lookups. Like we don't need guaranteed real time on everything, right? So there was stuff like that we've pushed into a read only, which gave us a lot of breathing room on some of those like really heavy reads, like, especially because like the authorization system is all based out of the DB too. So like any ACL check hits the DB. So the reader was just it was all hitting the main DB until we put that into a reader. So the main DB was just getting crushed anytime we had heavy traffic usage, which was, every day during business hours.
What software do you use for tracking any of those heavy queries?
What do we use for tracking the heavy queries? The place that they usually come out is we're in incident response mode, and we're like looking at RDS for what are the queries, like what are the top 5 to 10 queries and like why. And then we're trying to figure those out. Then usually one of those or two do not have indexes. That usually gives us some room. And there's usually some other thing we need to address, or we can make the query more optimized, or it's just being too greedy, or something like that.
Got it. Okay.
Nice.
It's pretty reasonable.
When you said that the permissioning has to hit the database and that's crushing you, in your model, do you have a caching layer? Like, do you have a Redis cache or something?
Yeah, we just stood up Redis very, very recently. So yeah, we just we were doing that for, I think exactly it was for the ACLs was the cache. So yeah.
Yeah, because
we haven't seen the effects yet. I don't know if it's even in production yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I imagine if you put, you did Redis with like a 5-minute timeout or something, and you probably, those would go down by like 80, 90%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. That's where we're heading right now. Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, I lost my page. And then, so we were talking about emails and SMS, and you're getting the responses, and that I think decoupling it so that you can have an asynchronous, you can back up on a queue and have an asynchronous writes.
Yeah.
I think would get you a lot of reliability there.
Mhm.
Is there, you mentioned, I think also that you were having trouble making sure that you actually tracking that you sent all the emails correctly.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of the way that the system architecture is set up right now is there's kind of different sources from where the emails can be sent into what we will call the email service, for lack of a better word, right? So what the
Mm-hmm.
email service does is kind of a multi-step flow of, and not all of these are actually built out, but is this person on the block list or whatever's sending out, is it on the block list? We'd like to have like, kind of a check. Does this have certain terminology in it that we don't want to go out?
Mm-hmm.
Block words, stuff like that. So that should be kind of the first layer, and then the next layer is making sure we route that request, to the right DB table, which will then trigger the correct corresponding third-party service. So
Mm-hmm.
if a user wants to send out 10,000 emails, right? Like let's say 9,550 are delivered, we don't really have a good way to identify which emails of which batch for which customer didn't go out and why. We have a
Okay.
log of errors in the DB that email service, if something goes wrong, it'll log an error, but the developer's not really notified and there's not really a process for trying to resolve that anyway. So there's just kind of like I would call them like inconsistency type of issues where, you know, we just don't really have good data in and out of the system for that section of the application, not at the granularity that
Got
we
it.
would like to where we could reach out and be like, here's what happened with your thing. Would you like us to go ahead and send that email that should have gone out to these 500 people, or the system could auto, self heal, or, something like that would be great. And even as developers being able to go into that log and look, why are these errors happening? And, to be frank, I've seen some of them. Some of it's just, sometimes we're timing out or we're out of memory. Like there's just like little things happening in that system. Maybe we're trying to send out so many, since there's no queue, it just gets going and processing to the point that it can't anymore, and it stops the process. So it's kind of like those types of issues. And I think my gut reaction is that to me means we need to have a better kind of documented system design on how that should all flow, and then how that gets
Mm-hmm.
validated. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you actually test and validate as an engineer that you're sending and kind of actually having land the amount of emails that you expect, and that your observability system is telling you what is missing? That's kind of the next hurdle that I think we would like to jump over.
Yeah, I think that is. I would love to dive into that. I think it might be take a too much time because we're already at 30 minutes, and I don't want to keep everybody here all day. As much as I would love talking about it. Um, yeah, off the top of my head, that sounds like a whole lot of. You need more queues. You need to move things between, but your email service needs to move things into, as you said, a defined process from we want to do this to we're cleaning on all the various steps, and you move things between queues, and then you record when things fall out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the recording and
Makes
the
sense.
alerting is one thing that stood out to me. Definitely having some kind of, I think Sentry is a good software for that, like reporting whenever some kind of exception happens, or if it's not an exception, you just want to report it anyway. Then you can report it to Sentry and have it like integrate with Slack, let you know that something happened with that service, and then improving logging such that you can go back through and rebuild where it died, and then kind of infer IDs, 450 or what was it, 9,550
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
to 10,000 are have not been sent. So that is, step one. At least you know how to rebuild the manual request and to fix it, even if you don't have a nice system in place yet.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a great call. Do you have some kind of open telemetry installed?
Yeah, we do. So we have an open PR for Sentry that's just in the process of getting through code review and getting merged. And it's just like an error boundary catcher right now, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of catching whatever gets thrown, unhandled exceptions, stuff like that. And then what we're trying to do is bake that into the development process so that like the developers are logging. It's like a developer. Sometimes you're writing code and you're like, oh, this will never get reached, and then somehow it does. Like I
It
want a
does.
log of what happened that we got there.
Yeah.
So kind of having those things. So that goes into Sentry. Sentry alerts us in Slack, and then people kind of respond like an incident. We also have uptime robot, I think it's called, that usually alerts us if it just kind of pings the site, and if it goes down, it alerts us. That usually tells us to go check AWS in our heads. And then we have a lot of that data, including some of the AWS data feeding into a Grafana instance, like a self-hosted Grafana instance that kind of curates and aggregates all of the data from the different sources. I think we also pull in some data from Mailgun or SendGrid as well, and we'd like to kind of have a one-stop shop for like incident response, where you come in and you're like, okay, here's the system at an overview. Where do I need to dive into?
Okay, good. So, yeah. Sorry, when you said it, just all of a sudden I had to like, oh wait, since you were saying that they were going from a single actual server, you brought them onto the cloud, they probably didn't have like aggregated logs or any of those things set up either.
Yeah. I think they were just writing to like the default PHP text file log, as the main logging. And then, like I said, they did have the uptime robot before, which would alert them if basically just, is it up or not? That's all you get.
Nice.
Better than nothing,
At least,
I guess.
Starting with the good steps, yeah. Small steps.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep. Better than a customer is what I always say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Anything that you find before the customer is good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been super amazing, and thank you for coming and talking with us. If anybody wants to learn more about you, Dustin, where should they go?
Yeah, feel free to check out dustinray.com or redhook.agency.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and everyone for listening and watching. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.